Okay, according to the thingy, I am going live on YouTube and PeerTube. Last time I did PeerTube, PeerTube caused some issues. I think it made my device overheat potentially. So as always, PeerTube side of things, if you want to watch these live streams in beta, because things might go wrong, it is the deprioritized one still, but the more of you that test it out, the better it'll get over time. And eventually we can do more fun things over on the PeerTube side of things, where everything's open source and it's all in our little umbrella. No need for ads, any big tech tracking, none of that stuff. And you can find that down in the description, I believe. But welcome everybody to a weekly privacy wins, more like 2 weekly, bi-weekly privacy wins for the last couple weeks. We got some exciting stuff today. As you might have seen, Linux Mint was chosen over Windows, but there are many other fun ones here this week. We do have a smaller week this week, but it doesn't take away from how good some of these are, because some of these have some really solid things that I didn't really expect. So I'll go ahead and give you all a few extra minutes to get logged in. Let me know if I sound how I look, if the video looks good, if the audio looks good. I'll keep an eye out here and say hi if you're in the chat. And I'll go ahead and just start with the chat, and you guys just let me know how you're doing, how your day's going. That's all I have to kind of preview things for today. Let's see, so we got Grim was here very early, 10:30 a.m. That would have been like 4 hours ago. Santiago Rivera, I don't know, is that a coconut? That's a coconut, okay. If you have a beverage you're drinking during this, I guess leave the beverage in the live chat as well. I guess that's the new trend. It's 2300 in Europe. I'm sorry, if enough of you want a different time, please just let me know in the comments. This was a good time that seemed semi-neutral in time zones, but clearly a bit tougher here for some of you Europeans. Moonshare Panda, been using Catchy OS, and I couldn't be happier. That's awesome. I'm glad you found a good OS for you. Small Bart says first. Gent1 says hi. I'm not going to try, but this person is happy. KK Dustuff, hi Techlore. Hello, hello. Chris Anthony says all good, doing well. Recently switched to Linux Mint. Wow. Sounds like you're the same person who I'm going to be showcasing. John Smith, I've been using Mint for a year now. Only issue I have, I can't get the YubiKey press to work. Interesting. I haven't heard that reported before. That would be a pretty big deal breaker for me, because that's how I get into a lot of my sensitive accounts. So, cool. All right, yeah, we're getting more people in here. Any other highs? Anybody else? I see 40 people so far, and I don't see 40 people who've left a comment. So some of you are being very shy. Okay. Okay, we're over 50 people now. Have you heard of BetaNet from the Raven team? It's a protocol. No, I have not heard of this. It looks really interesting though. Just your description, I suppose. I haven't thoroughly looked into it. I myself have been using Fedora, but I switched to Linux. Yeah, I am a bigger fan of Fedora than Linux Mint. That is my go-to distro. I don't make that too much of a secret in my content, but I still think anyone moving to any Linux distro over Windows is getting a lot of privacy benefits, so I'm not going to nitpick too much there. All right, we got enough of you on here. Feel free, again, the way these are always structured, welcome everybody, welcome to the wins. This is your place to kind of share anything you've been working on, any part of your journey you want to talk about. Ideally, you do it on the forum, because it's longer form, and you guys can discuss things a little bit cleaner than in a live stream chat that just kind of, what are you limited to, like 200 characters, maybe less. So it's just not quite the same, but if you're in the live chat, please leave your wins, tell me about your journey, and then I'm going to go through the forum first and kind of cut back and forth between the forum and the live chat. You guys can also kind of ask any general questions if you just want to ask anything about me, about my journey, about digital rights, about Techlore, whatever you want to ask, and I'll go ahead and try to knock some of those out as well. So without further ado, let's get into our highlight win, which is from Torma. Now, this is a pretty big one for me. I got Linux Mint running on my good computer instead of Windows 11. It's having a lot more issues than my used Dell did, but I'm working on them. Overall, it's functional for what I need and pretty customizable. So one thing people really like Linux Mint for is the Cinnamon desktop, which I believe comes out of the box. And that is what people describe most commonly as the most Windows-like desktop environment. You can use Cinnamon on any Linux distro for the most part, but Mint is just very well known for being an easy transition for Windows users. And if any of you guys remember, Linux Tech Tips did a whole Linux challenge where they tried migrating to Linux. I think it was for a month or something like that, and they documented the journey. Luke used Linux Mint, and he was very much, he did a lot better in a challenge. Let's just leave it at that, if you guys remember that. To continue the win, next step is to get my Potato running Linux. It came with Windows 10, but can barely run that, let alone 11. Considering trying Alpine Linux on it just to see how a GNU-less OS is. I'm going to need a hub or something though. It pulled an Apple and only has one USB plug in it, and that's also the charging port. Yeah, that's not a good setup. I suppose I should upgrade the Dell to the newest version of Mint while I have the bootable drive. Yeah, so first off, really big congrats on even experimenting with these things. I don't know what your history is in terms, like if this is your first experience with Linux, if this is your first time, or if you've used it before and this is just kind of a new experiment you're using for older devices. But either way, a really solid thing you're doing is giving life to devices that might not be able to fully run Windows. I used to have this laptop, I called it the crap top, because it was kind of a hunk of crap, but one thing that was really good about it is it was ultra portable. And so I'd say it's the equivalent of like a Chromebook style, like a small Chromebook style form factor, but it had some like Intel Pentium, it was like worse than a Pentium processor. It had 4 cores, but they are the weakest damn cores you could ever imagine, and it barely ran Windows. It would take like 20 seconds for my browser to open. And this is with an SSD, so it's not like it was a hard drive speed issue. But then I installed Linux on it, and Linux just felt probably twice as fast. It was still slow as hell, but like things were opening much quicker, things were less bloated, and I feel like underpowered machines are where you're going to notice the biggest difference between bloated Windows and unbloated Linux. So it's something to consider if you have an old device, which many of you probably do at this point. It's not uncommon for you to have an old Linux machine, or an old laptop that you haven't touched in a while because it's just old. But there's a lot of cool DIY projects that you can do with that old laptop. You can have it be like maybe a place where you keep 2FA key backups. Maybe you can even repurpose it for a Pi hole, or maybe that can be your NAS. You can just hook up hard drives to it. You know, it's a bit hacky, but there are a lot of cool DIY projects that you guys can explore. So if you have anything like that, let me know in the live chat because I'd love to see what some of you guys have done to be a little bit more creative. But yeah, thank you Torma for sharing your wins, and let me scroll up to the top, and I'm gonna Obama award myself here because I believe I'm the first one this week. So someone named Henry, let's see what he said. The newest video that he put out on some random YouTube channel talks about why he started using a browser-only VPN workflow. This is always so embarrassing because I genuinely wanted to leave this one, and then yeah, I gotta still read it out. Some people in the comments left some cool other workflows I'm excited to try in the coming weeks. So yeah, I read a few different things. So if any of you watched my recent video, I pretty much showcased why there's some cool benefits in having a VPN extension in your browser and how it makes things like split tunneling websites just stupid simple. And it makes it a lot easier for me to actually realistically have my VPN enabled on more websites than I otherwise would. So, and I went through all my philosophy in there and how it's definitely not a perfect solution, but it's something to think about. The first one that was most interesting was someone on Mastodon pretty much came forward and shared this is why they use Mozilla VPN. So, context, Mozilla VPN is actually a Mullvad white label. So it's using Mullvad servers. You're pretty much getting the same privacy and security as you would otherwise get when you use Mullvad. So you might be wondering, well, so why go with Mozilla VPN? And I've been firmly in this camp. I think I even made a video of like kind of crapping on Mozilla VPN a few years ago. But Mozilla VPN is a really cool integration that Mullvad doesn't have, which is it integrates with Firefox containers. So it's a lot easier to do things like have different containers that go through different servers or don't go through the VPN at all. I believe this is somewhat new, but someone tipped me off on this, and now it's probably something else I'm going to explore because it could actually be a super solid middle ground, because with this workflow, you'd have Mullvad running system-wide, you'd be able to make easy site exceptions within your browser, and you'd still get Mullvad VPN plus the proxy in Mullvad browser. If I'm making no sense to you, you should probably watch my video so you know what the hell I'm talking about. I think it's the second newest video I just put out on like what to do if your VPN is blocking you. But something to throw your guys' way. Another cool thing I saw is just native split tunneling, but using IP addresses. This does sound like a pain in the ass to me, because I don't want to like have to grab an IP address for a website, go into the Mullvad client, add a whitelist. That just sounds like a pain in the ass to me, to be honest. But it's something I still want to try because you guys sometimes, a lot of times actually, have a lot of good ideas. I was going down the path to make it sound like you guys don't have good ideas. That was not the intention. The part two is I started using DuckDuckGo AI proxies for a few more things. And I actually installed like DuckDuckGo as a web app, so now I can quickly access it. And it's working really well. If you guys have any purposes for AI models and you want something that still gives you the same AI models like ChatGPT, but it like privately proxies it, I do recommend checking out DuckDuckGo's AI stuff. I've been really enjoying it. So yeah, that's this person's win. I don't know who this is, but a very interesting profile photo. I'll do one more and then I'll pivot over to you guys here in the live chat. And then we'll keep doing the little throwback that we always do. Throwing it back and forth. Throwback implies it's like something historical. So not a lot of changes compared to the last 2 weeks, but that's a good sign. So they backed up files, app settings, and data on an external SSD. They created a system restore point. They deleted a couple more accounts, cleared subscriptions list, even more to have only essential channels and resources. They switched all accounts to Proton and disroot. They applied NextDNS with customization inside of Mullvad's DNS. I believe you meant Mullvad VPN. Correct me if I'm wrong. They switched to OnlyOffice from Microsoft Office, and LibreOffice was an option too, but for me, OnlyOffice looks better. And I fully agree. I like LibreOffice. It's a great project, but I always end up using OnlyOffice over LibreOffice. It's just a much more polished service. They installed Tor browser and Element. They removed all biometrics from their Samsung device. They got LG Player to stream Blu-rays, which is a fun way to avoid streaming services. They selected dedicated time in the evening to check socials. I'm sure you can also combine that with NextDNS if you haven't already. NextDNS lets you do things like only connect to social media websites at certain times of the day. I made a NextDNS masterclass if you want to watch that on YouTube. And then read Hitchhiker's Guide to Privacy. It covers ways to pretty much achieve anonymity, but there's a lot of stuff to learn overall, and it's not quite what they were looking for, but I'm sure hopefully you learned a few things. They watched Social Dilemma, the movie, and they bought NextDNS and Proton Unlimited, and this is the best value, security, easiness of use they can find. So yes, you say not a lot of changes, and then you kind of listed out a ton of changes, so I don't know if you're just trying to downplay things or what, but that's a lot of good stuff. These all are like, some of these are more minor things, but I know that they take a lot of testing and back and forth with different services to really figure out if that's where you want to be. So still big wins. And I think the biggest takeaway from this for all of you listening, do a backup or have a backup system in place. And if you don't have one yet, prioritize that this next week. I've mentioned this in the previous live stream and it resonated with people in a very good way, so I'll say it again. What would happen if you have your devices on you and someone robs you out on the streets? Let's say they just take your phone, they take your laptop and your backpack, and let's say you have a tablet at home, but your house burns down. My point is, what would happen if you lose all your tech, all right now? How do you get back and get your data, and how do you get access to your accounts? If you don't know the answer to that question, you probably should. That's one of the #1 things that you should be prepared for. I know it's an unlikely situation where you lose all of your devices, but it's still something good to reflect on. Does this mean keeping a piece of paper with like one password that gets you into everything else that's in a family member's house in another state? Like think about these kind of things because you never know what's going to happen to you. And now, I'm gonna migrate over to your guys' comments here. Let me move this over here. Let me check in on the stream. I'm not seeing any, everything looks good, high FPS, bit rates are strong, so if you're on PeerTube, you should be treated really nicely this week. Let's see here. Oh, 2:30 in India. See, I'm glad you guys are here, but make sure you get rest too. So if you're gonna stick around, at least sleep after I'm done here. Have you heard of BetaNet? Okay, I already answered that one. I myself have been using Fedora. Yep, I switched to Linux when my ThinkPad couldn't run Windows 11. I've done some distro hopping, but always came back to Linux Mint or LMDE. Yeah, I think when you find a distro that clicks with you, you might try distro hopping a few more times, but if you keep ending up on the same distro, I think you've actually found the distro that probably clicks with you best. Mint or any distro that comes with KDE is an easy switch. Yeah. I like Linux Mint. Hello, Autistic Milk. What a name. I like Linux Mint. My concern is that the distro lags behind with regards to WLAN support. Yeah, I am not super familiar with that limitation, but if that's something that you're concerned about, then I'm sure there are going to be more bleeding edge distros that keep up with that kind of thing better. Microsoft will lose a large customer base by dropping Windows 10 soon. I wonder if they can afford it to do so. Yeah, I mean, they're doing this whole thing where they're allowing you to pay. Actually, what am I? Let me cut back over. Sorry about that. They're doing this whole thing where I think you can pay $30 a year to extend security updates on Windows 10. So they're offering at least a minor middle ground. But I agree. I think Microsoft has been doing a lot of things that are at least making people realize how crappy Windows is. I mean, the way that they've handled the whole recall Copilot thing, I don't even think in the mainstream has been perceived positively, let alone, of course, our communities. You also look at what they're doing with, shutting off Windows 10 for people who still might need access to it and then paywalling them to get security updates. A little bit crappy. And then you also start looking at all the typical Windows problems that just exist on every version of Windows, and that's still a thing in Windows 11. So I don't know. So here's my problem, right? If you look at Google or Apple, they might do crappy things like this, but they can at least try to justify it as like, this is better for the user. Like, we're doing this to make our user experience better, or like, we're using this to tighten our integration. It's a very Apple thing of like, yeah, you can't have, third party this, but that's because ours is just so much better. And, at least they build a decent ecosystem out of it. And I would argue Google as well. What really pisses me off about Windows and Microsoft is that they just run the software that people actually want to use, right? It runs all the Adobe stuff, it runs all the games, but I don't know anyone who really cares about the operating system beyond that. Like, Microsoft services just kind of suck. So that's my tangent on Microsoft and Windows in general, is it would be almost more justifiable if it was a better operating system that was doing all these things for the best interest of the consumer, but it seems like all of these things are just designed to screw you. So I know every big tech company does things to screw you, but that one felt especially crappy. Switched to Cinnamon Mint OS on a ThinkPad a few weeks ago to store my crypto on. Loving my first experience with Linux. Hey, congrats! I'm glad that you enjoyed it. What kind of pushed you over? If you're still around, please follow up and let me know what formally pushed you to make the switch. But congrats. I use X11 over WLAN these days. The Potato runs Arch with a Sway window manager. Nice, nice, nice. Nice workflows, guys. Let's see. Secure boot. Is it useful and is it really secure without? My take on secure boot is it is an improvement, and it's also not going to keep you safe from everything. So unless it impedes on some usability reason that you need it off, I would almost always keep it on. I know there's a lot of people who say, oh, I did this attack and I bypassed it, and oh, here's a vulnerability. But that doesn't take away from the situations where it does help protect you. So I still think secure boot's important. You can, of course, live without it, but I'm always going to encourage people to use secure boot. Antics is also an option, says Catsign. Switched from Windows 11 to Mint. Never really got to use Linux prior, but I've ran Mint now for a couple of months. I don't use the terminal much, and thankfully, hardly ever need to. Yeah, even since when I got started with Linux, like I started with Linux in like 2015, I believe. And back then it was already starting to be a lot more GUI forward, especially then my first distro was Ubuntu. And Ubuntu has always done a bit more to be ahead of the GUI stuff, I think, especially back in those days. But nowadays it's only gotten better. So I think if you're somebody who's scared of the CLI, you can get very far with Linux without even touching the terminal. And it's not that intimidating. Like once you run basic commands like, sudo apt update, Fedora DNF update, like when you start running basic commands, you'll go, oh, that wasn't too bad. And it'll build your confidence. And before you know it, you'll be a terminal whiz. Only missing feature of Proton VPN browser extension is kill switch. Yeah, I agree. I think, you have to remember that not most, but like all the traffic outside your browser is not running through the Proton VPN browser extension. So I kind of see why that isn't really part of the threat model. With that said, it would be a cool feature if it's like only run browser traffic through Proton VPN when it's enabled, but then also how does that work with split tunneling? So yeah, I think it'd be a cool feature if they were able to pull it off, but I kind of see why it hasn't been prioritized. Let's see. Yeah, so I haven't really covered the Proton situation in terms of them moving, because unless I missed something, there isn't that much information yet. And I've mentioned it throughout videos of like, oh, Proton has announced they're going to be slowly migrating away from Switzerland. I might have missed the newest update where maybe they fully expand. That's very possible. So if that was put out in the last couple days, maybe I need to get caught up to date with that. But last I checked, it was very like in the coming years, we'll slowly be migrating our infrastructure away from Switzerland. So I need to look into this. If you guys already know and you want to tell me in the live chat, let me know. I don't know how Web3 directly has anything to do with privacy. Like, I don't. I guess a lot of Web3 tends to be decentralized technology, which can and cannot be pro-privacy, if that makes sense. Like, I think privacy can be an independent concept that exists regardless of web number, if that makes sense. Last 4 months, moved to Graphene, Linux Mint, Proton Suite, Entei, Windows Recall, and Trade Wars was the trigger. P.S. My YubiKey works fine on Linux Mint. And that's from JP on the road. A lot of good stuff there. And it's cool that the YubiKey works fine on Linux Mint for you. I've always assumed that the YubiKey situation, if it doesn't work, has more to do with your browser than your operating system, assuming you're on like a regular mainstream operating system. So that's good to hear, because I know someone earlier said they couldn't get their YubiKey to work on Linux Mint. I can't say between Arch, Mint, and Debian. Curious to get a laptop with Linux on. I've been exclusively on Windows since '95. Yeah. I thought, when I read it at first, that's why I laughed. I thought you said I'm exclusively on Windows 95. And I'm like, whoa. You probably want to get some security updates, man. But no, that's pretty good, pretty good. You can always try dual booting. You can spin up a virtual machine. You can try just a flash drive and just boot into Linux and see what it's like. It doesn't install it. It just installs on the flash drive. But I highly recommend at least trying it out and seeing if it clicks with you. I think that once you kind of get exposed to it, it's really easy to fall in love with it. Got Catchy OS here from Moonshare Panda. I think I already mentioned your comment earlier. I'm gonna catch up, I swear. What's your favorite color? That's a tough one. I don't have a favorite color. It really depends on the context. I use Gentoo, by the way. Yeah, Flatpaks with Fedora Atomic Editions is a pretty cool place to be. For those who don't know, what used to be called immutable distros, they are formally starting to use the term atomic now. The concept is the system files can't really be changed, and it gives quite a bit more security to users, and then instead you kind of run things like Flatpaks to keep things a bit more sandboxed and away from your operating system. And Fedora has these atomic editions that any of you can try, like Silverblue. And yeah, you can use things like Flatseal, just like what Derek is saying here. And Flatseal is kind of like what you have on Mac OS, where you can allow or deny permissions, like, oh, this program can access these files, but not these files. This program can't access my camera. It can access my microphone. It pretty much is like mobile device permissions, but on your desktop operating system, but a lot more nitty gritty. So if you're somebody who's like a big security nerd and you want to see what the newest tech is in the Linux space for that, Silverblue with Flatpaks and try this out with Flatseal is a really cool workflow that I think you guys should check out. I use Brave browser and ESET antivirus. Interesting. Let's see. I don't have that many opinions on Secure Blue. Been on Linux since 07. We got an OG. Good stuff, lady. Lady Scorpion. SteamOS will change that. I've heard really good things about SteamOS. You discourage installing Total Launcher. I don't know what that is. So I don't think I'd discourage it. But maybe if I saw what it was, maybe I would. That is my answer. I've been testing... let me click away. Okay, I've been testing for the first time Fedora Silverblue is an Atomic Linux distro. I come from Mac and love the concept. No update hassles and seems great for security. Yeah, if you come from Mac OS, I think these Atomic distros are actually, even though, yeah, I would just say it's going to feel somewhat familiar to you, is probably the easiest way to put it. So I'm not surprised that you felt this way. I've been on Tumbleweed for many years, by the way. Yeah, Tumbleweed's great. I haven't heard of this. That's unfortunate if RCS is going to be locked down. Okay, we're going to continue now with the wins. I got caught up with your guys' comments here. Let's see. I haven't been too coordinated in my work towards privacy lately, but recently downloaded Tails to a USB stick after losing my last one. No persistent storage on it, so already experiencing the benefits. So if you guys don't know, Tails OS is essentially the Tor browser, but as an operating system. So everything when you boot it up on the operating system is routed through Tor, and it's designed to anonymize you with everybody else using it. And it's even more powerful than the Tor browser. This is all run from a flash drive, and so what happens is you can just unplug the flash drive, you can power it off, and then it wipes all the data that you generated while you were using it. So if you had browser history, or anything else, you changed any settings, when you plug it back in and you boot it up again, it's like new. You can create something called persistent storage, which does start saving some data and settings, but by default it is not this way. So what this person is saying is they had a USB stick with Tails on it that they probably booted up and did, you know, whatever they wanted to do with it, but then they lost it, but it's not a big deal because it's not persistent. So it's just a Tails flash drive. That's no different than if you install Tails for the first time on it. And that's the beauty of Tails. They also signed up for one of the opt-out services. I assume you mean like people searching website removal services? I don't know what opt-out services are, but yeah, it'd be good if you expanded there. Also updated the login for an old work email that was coupled to a laptop I no longer have. New to the forum, nice to meet everyone, and nice to have you, I see you. And yeah, I mean, these are minor things, but still big wins, especially like updating old accounts that you forgot about. I still catch myself doing that constantly, and it's this constant cat and mouse game because I feel like I always have everything in my password manager, and then it's like, oh, I found this old account again. So I very much feel that. Janelle, 1991, iCloud Private Relay. I subscribe to iCloud Plus on my iPhone. With a gift card without a credit card because it offers much better battery life than a classic VPN. I always had problems with battery life using the official WireGuard client or Tor Onion routing. I also installed the Safari plugin Sponsor Block and uBlock Origin Lite. This allows me to watch YouTube videos without ads on the train, meaning that not only are ads from YouTube filtered out, but also those from the content creator. This is made possible by a crowdsourced filter list with timestamps indicating where ads begin and end in the video. I didn't know that they had a Safari extension on mobile, and yes, for those who don't know, uBlock Origin, let's see. Sorry, we have our patron signal group. I have not forgot about you guys, and I will be getting back to you guys in a sec. So, Janelle. uBlock Origin Lite. So this is from the same developer that develops uBlock Origin. They built a Lite version for Safari on mobile. I have yet to test it, but it looks awesome. I currently have AdGuard installed for an iPhone, and it's all run through Safari, but this, in theory, should give all the same benefits, and so it's something I'm going to be diving into as well. So definitely share your experience with that. And as for iCloud Private Relay, kind of like the video I just covered, iCloud Private Relay could be a good middle ground if you just want web browser traffic protected, but you don't need as much of the system-wide protection. And I'm sure that it inevitably is going to be better for battery. Because if you ever run a VPN, like very consistently, I don't think it should be killing your battery. But if you run a VPN on mobile, you'll probably see like, oh, 5 to 10% battery usage on every battery cycle could be from your VPN. Doesn't sound like much, but if you have to plug in your phone to charge 10 times, one of those battery cycles came from your VPN. So I can see how if you're more battery sensitive or you have a phone with less battery life, that is a pretty big thing to think about. We have a few things from our patrons. Michael said TIL crap top. Yes, yes. Garujo said, speaking of wins, so Garujo has a win, and this is from our Signal group, signed up to Lunatask, gonna try it soon. I made a review of Lunatask. It's essentially like a life management app with end-to-end encryption, and it does things like task management, project management, relationship tracking, habit tracking, and it integrates with your calendar. It's pretty cool and thorough, so it's something to check out. I've been using it, I've been liking it. And yeah, I made a review. It's not perfect. There are some things that I would still like to see from it, but it's been the best thing I've found so far with good privacy for this use case. Gadujo said, I've spoken loud on chat control to family. Thanked friends for being on Signal and that family member who registered a Signal account. In total, has received a donation of 35 euros from me. Damn. Europeans, good luck, by the way. We need to win. Yeah, last I checked, things are looking pretty good for putting off the current implementation of chat control. So I think you Europeans are safe for now. Let's see. Steven said, I really like Lunatask. We'll probably do the lifetime option soon. Yeah, I'm still doing a monthly sub. I haven't dropped the cash on a lifetime, but I wouldn't blame you. Garujo agreed that Ubuntu is very GUI forward. And then opinion on rant or talk. So Garujo has a question here about the iPhones. So let me go ahead and touch on this. One sec. So Garujo asks thoughts on the iPhone 17. I actually don't have many thoughts. I'd say the Pro colors are an interesting choice. The navy blue one is objectively the best color. You can't change my mind about that. So for the person who asked for my favorite color earlier, perhaps navy blue is higher up than orange and the other one that I saw. The other one was fine. It was just a little plain. Now, the iPhone Air seems like it's cool tech and also just a worse phone from what I can tell. And I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that take anywhere. The iPhone 17 seems like a good phone. The only thing I'm really upset about the iPhone 17 in general, and this is a bigger complaint with phones in general, the general take I'm seeing online is the iPhone 17 is an incredible value. Oh my gosh, like you just got the Pro features from last year, but now for the regular iPhone price. But it's still an expensive phone. Like, guys, there used to be an iPhone SE just a couple years ago that started at $440, I believe, and now the cheapest iPhone is $600. That means the cheapest phone you can possibly buy from Apple is $600. And I think that's ridiculous. I think there needs to be a better budget to mid-range lineup across all companies. So that is my big complaint. I would love to see a $500 or less phone across all of these because, dude, I don't use my phone for frickin' anything. That's like, you know, the cameras are cool on these big phones, the tech is cool, but as someone who mostly just like checks up with basic things on my phone, I just need something that has okay battery life, an okay processor to run my apps, and like, I'm even good with like 64 gigs of storage, you know? That's fine for me. I don't really use much storage on my phone. So I feel like I'm not alone there. I feel like there's a lot of people who don't really need all the cool things these phones have, and that is something I'm disappointed in. And I wish that these phones were a bit cheaper. And then there is a new thing that Garujo mentioned about the iPhones that you guys should know about, which is there's a new security feature called Memory Integrity Enforcement. I have not looked at the white paper and the technical information, so I can't tell you much about it, but essentially it should improve the security on the hardware level for a lot of these devices. So that's only in the new iPhones, so you won't find that in older iPhones. So if you're a security nerd, that's something to consider. And then let me check out your guys' comments here. The other day you suggested to use VPNs in the browser. What about on mobile? Is it useful to have VPNs on all the time, or is it a waste of battery? So I just kind of touched on that a little bit. It's going to depend on you, and I did allude to this in the video as well, that on mobile you can replicate the workflow if you need to. But on platforms like Android, this is not really necessary. On Android, split tunneling is done via the operating system, and almost every VPN on Android integrates with that like API so that you can easily just exclude an app. So on Android, if your banking app is giving you issues, you can still run your system-wide VPN. You just go into the settings and just turn it off. It's that easy. So I'd say on Android, you don't really need to do this. And also, there is no like VPN only in the browser workflow that I've seen on Android. Like, there's no Safari that goes through private relay on Android. As far as I've seen, all of them use a system-wide VPN to accomplish this. On iOS, you have the Safari with private relay option. And so that's pretty much it. And that can actually be combined with a system-wide VPN. That's kind of your choice. I'd say it really just this really depends on how often you're getting blocked by your apps relative to what kind of protection you need. Ooh, yeah, you're gonna have to look into that. I'm not super familiar with T-Mobile home internet and like what kind of restrictions they have on port forwarding. But there should be pretty established documentation for that. Tailscale WireGuard would probably be your best bet. Yeah, the Tailscale WireGuard, and especially with Mulvad config, is really solid. uBlock Lite was made for Chrome, removing a manifest version. Yeah, and that's also the same one being used for Safari, which is what the person used for their Safari. Tested uBlock on Mac OS, works great, no complaints, just as good as the original UBO. Nice. Yeah, that checks out. How I see it, iPhones do better on the resale market, and carrier Apple trade-in program has incentives that make it more affordable, but also traps you in the ecosystem. So yeah, I wish you could be trapped in the ecosystem with a lower starting price point, if you chose to do so. I use Kali Linux and route all traffic through Tor. You can turn your Kali Linux into a Tails OS system whilst being able to access penetration testing tools. That is a very layered configuration, so nice job. A few weeks back, you briefly talked about that story of researchers figuring out how to use Wi-Fi to biometrically identify people. Any ideas or thoughts on how to mitigate such issues you have? So a lot of the research stories, it's really important you guys understand this, because you're going to consistently see these research articles that tell you about these insane attacks where, like, you know, they reflect light and, you know, use the rebounded light particles to, you know, track your keystrokes based on the sound waves coming from the sun and how it, you know, morphs with the stars. So, you know, like, I'm exaggerating, but you're going to find these really cool research articles from really smart people who find ways to bypass even air-gapped machines that don't connect to the internet. The point of sharing those stories isn't to make you guys think you have to protect against those attacks. The point is to kind of show something that's cool. Get you thinking about these more advanced things and just be fascinated with them. There's very few people in the world who I think genuinely need to be concerned about this kind of stuff. And as far as I know, that Wi-Fi one, they should be doing things that actually patch the issue over time. So I really want to be clear that when those types of stories are covered, it's not meant to be a, like, oh, you need to be concerned about this. It's a, hey, this is cool, check this out, cool research from cool researchers, something to think about. And I hope that's answers your question. Catchy OS gang checking in. I don't do anything crazy, so I just use Fedora with a VPN on the browser. Perfect. I haven't dug much into it. I'm not a big, I'm not sold on devices that aren't run by, like, people with history in that kind of space. Like, selling a phone is no joke. And there's a lot of things that go along with that, like supply chain security, software updates, ensuring that the operating system is always up to date and has the newest patches. And I barely trust teams with like 3 or 4 full-time people to keep up with that kind of stuff. So it's just not for me. It's not something I've dug into. So that's my reasoning for why it's not even something I've really thought about. I use Arch, but I'm too lazy to set up App Armor. Is it worth it? I think it's worth checking it out. See if you like it, and you might find a really good use case for it for some programs. Thoughts on Lumo AI? I'm too lazy to set up Thoughts on Lumo? It works on most VPNs I've tried without an account. I made a whole Lumo AI first impressions video. It's still kind of in the same place I left it, which is I like Duck AI a lot. Duck AI always performs better than Lumo because you're just getting ChatGPT privately. And I have to pay extra for Lumo, I believe, if I want like the higher end model. And I have to like open Lumo exclusively to use it, and I'm getting a subpar experience and I have to pay for it. So for me, it doesn't make sense, but I think the tech behind Lumo is really cool, and what they've done, they try to guarantee it's as private as possible. Okay, we're gonna go back to the wins. Nye Flatline, New York Flatline. Not sure if this counts as a win, but I was just reminded to go over my toggles and Brave flags and make sure everything about AI and their crypto was shut off and most of the fingerprinting protections, including strict fingerprinting protection, was turned on. While I was checking my regular settings, I noticed one in content filtering that said anti-AI search filters, so pointing that out to everyone should count as a win because it reminds us all to check the settings after an update. Yeah, this is a really good thing to do, and I noticed this pattern. I made a video. I didn't think anyone would watch this video. This has been happening where I put out a video and I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be interesting to anybody, and then it performs super well. The Brave video one was that. I did like a Brave debloat guide where I kind of just showed how to disable all the stuff in Brave to make it as clean and minimal as possible. And a ton of the comments pretty much were saying, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could do this. I didn't know you could do that. So this is a general reminder. The first thing I do anytime I install a new piece of software is I go into the settings and I kind of just get familiar with everything going on. And I normally touch settings before I touch program, if that makes sense. So if I'm installing a new messenger, first thing I do is go into the settings before I actually try to message somebody, because I want to see all the options available to me. I want to make sure that like different privacy and security settings are enabled before I start, uploading my data to it. So just general good rule of thumb. And in the context of Brave, the tough thing with Brave and different browsers is that there's so many pieces to these things that I don't even think they really announce all of these changes over time. So I think it is one of those things that maybe, once every few months, it's good to just check in on the settings of all of your main programs to see if there's something new that you might have missed. That's something I just naturally do. I don't put much thought into it, but it does happen pretty often where I go, oh, I didn't know this new feature was here, and it turns out to be something I really enjoy. And yes, it's a good shout out. If any of you are like anti-AI, especially in the search realm of things, you don't want AI summaries, that's a good little pro tip if you want to just enable a content filter that disables it on, ideally, it sounds like every search engine. I see Michael typing, so we'll see what Michael says in the Signal group. Let's see. We got, I just don't like this name. I'm not gonna say it. There's no way for me to say it without sounding like a problem. I might as well give a tip or two for those using web browsers. If one were to be using only one browser for everything, unless they're using multi-account containers, which is a Firefox extension, which lets you essentially like have different settings and be logged into different accounts all in the same browser, and something like simple login, they're probably uninformed about the fingerprinting that's happening right under their noses, as Henry proves here. I don't know where I proved that. Where did I prove that? Let's see, you got an Invidious link. Is it my browser fingerprinting? Yes, it's my fingerprinting masterclass. If you guys haven't seen this yet, it's a really cool watch. It covers browser fingerprinting, what to do about it, how it works, etc. Not to worry, as there are ways to fight this with fingerprinting JavaScript slop. One way is using called browser compartmentalization. To explain this a bit, so I'm sure you're going to say this, but it's pretty much having different browsers for different things. You can have one for specific logins that's separate from something else. You can separate it by use cases. So if you have maybe personal life, work life, you can have different browsers for that. You can also use profiles within browsers with different settings. This is more of a high-level consideration. I think for most people, they should be concerned about securing their accounts using 2FA, maybe even using a VPN before touching this, because your IP address would link you anyway between these browsers. So there's a lot of things to be concerned about before you touch browser fingerprinting. But once you get there, these are the kind of things to start thinking about if it's something that you're still concerned about. And then they kind of talk about browser hardening. I don't fully agree with all of these extensions, which I think someone actually corrects them on down at the further along in the thread. Torma was the highlight, so we already did that one. And then yes, I do agree with Moonwriting here actually. uBlock Origin, libredirect, and maybe simple login are worth adding. We're in the age now where less extensions is typically better. A lot of protections are now found locally in your browser. You don't even need third-party extensions for them. And uBlock Origin has become such a powerful extension that so many people are using, that has so many features that used to only be found in these other extensions, that it almost is just best practice to have a browser with uBlock Origin, and that's kind of it. This is why Mullvad Browser, that's kind of the approach they took. Mullvad Browser is trying to pretty much have a similar situation as the Tor browser, but a little bit less hardcore and more usable, because instead of going through Tor, you're going through the Mullvad VPN, or you can use it without a VPN or a different VPN, but best practice is to use it with Mullvad VPN, so you get this anonymity effect of other people using Mullvad. All they have is uBlock Origin, and they have their own Mullvad VPN proxy. You can theoretically uninstall that if you really wanted to. But yeah, like this is like a hardened, out-of-the-box Tor-esque browser, and all it has is uBlock Origin. So I really think that that's probably the best practice nowadays. Okay, we're gonna do one more, and then I'll pivot over to the Signal group again, as well as the live chat. So please continue leaving your comments. A small privacy win for the week from Lightning Toaster. For the collaboration with a team, I've chosen to make a Proton Docs document instead of the usual Google Docs document. This is for a game jam, which is a challenge to make a game within a certain amount of time with a pre-chosen theme. That still doesn't help me. As a pro gamer, this is so below the, the standards I'm used to having. Jams, you guys have fun, I'm just a pro. I don't know anything about gaming, that's why I don't know anything about this, but these people are strangers to me. We've been using it for a few days now, and everybody got on board with it with no pushback. It shows to me it has passed the smell test for being a good enough alternative, and I will agree with this. Proton Docs is pretty solid. It's very smooth. It doesn't have all the features as Google Docs, but it is very easy to use, and it does mostly just work. So I will say I've been very impressed with Proton Docs, and I've heard there's rumors about Sheets coming soon. That would also be awesome. And then we got a rant. I'm really glad it worked out. I think since Proton as a company has gotten bigger, it really has been making waves, slowly disrupting the age-old landscape of Microsoft versus Google. What I'm about to say might be controversial. I haven't read this yet, so let's see. Because this is the old tongue of the economy that unfortunately seems to make most people take them more seriously. The slice of the population that listens more to grassroots vibes and authenticity-first marketing would still be classified as early adopters. By the way, on the topic of early adopters, it's so wild that in Finland, 1 in 4 desktop computers uses Linux. Servers not included. This page explains everything. Ever since I saw it, I've been loving Finland based on this fact alone. Very interesting stuff, and I don't know what part of this is... Oh, okay, I see. I missed your sentence, which was the hot take. You state you're glad they speak the notoriously marketing-first corpo language. Yeah, I mean... I think there's benefits to it, of course, from a company, corporate business perspective. I just think that people who are already using it and want something that doesn't feel like a big tech platform might not like it as much. So I get both sides, and I think it's a very valid point that you bring up there. And very cool stat on Finland, by the way. Let's pull this up. Yeah, pretty crazy. Wow. It's only been going up too, it seems. Yeah, overall the trend seems to be going up. Like just a year ago, it was much lower. It was 5%. Now it's 20%. It's pretty crazy. Good job, Finland. Okay, I think we got 2 more, but let's go and pivot to the comments here. See what you guys are up to. So over in the Signal group, I do the same. Michael said I do the same every SW, including games. I don't know what you're referring to. You guys are speaking gaming language, and I just can't understand it. So I'm trying my best, but I don't know what you guys are talking about. Let's see what you guys are up to in the live chat here. Need to make a Nova launcher open source now that it's shutting down. To be fair, there are lots of good launchers that are already open source. I really liked OLauncher, and I believe it's still around. So if you want a very quick, very minimal launcher recommendation, OLauncher, I believe they're on F-Droid. I'm doing a course on cybersec right now, and the most common route of being hacked by far is phishing emails. Yeah, I believe that. These fake emails getting pretty good. What do you think of DNS crypt? Why not to use it instead of a VPN? I'm not super familiar enough with DNS crypt to fully compare it to a VPN. It seems like a cool tool, but I am not familiar enough with it to fully comment on it. But if you want to expand why you think it's a good replacement, please do. I'm not anti-AI, but I booted up Windows today and there was so much AI slammed in it. It was both obnoxious and slightly creepy. Yeah, again, that's kind of my issue with Windows in general. Everything is just annoying, obnoxious, and creepy. That is Windows. You just described Windows. The only privacy extensions I have are uBlock, Consentomatic, and Proton VPN. What's Consentomatic? I haven't heard of that. I've been using the Zap tool with uBlock to bypass those annoying cookie prompts or bypass Tumblr, Instagram, Force. By the way, there is a filter you can enable. I don't know if it's enabled by default. If it's not, it removes annoying cookie prompts. It's a filter you can enable in uBlock Origin, so you might be able to not use that Zap feature anymore. Over the past few months, I switched to Graphene, switched to many FOSS apps, convinced some of my contacts to use Signal, cleaned my digital footprint, and now I'm about to install Linux. A lot of good stuff. So those are massive wins, and I'm glad to hear it took you a few months rather than like in a week, because that would be a lot to do in a week. I try to confine myself to one browser extension, uBlock Origin, but I can't live without some extensions, notably Dark Reader and Violent Monkey. Will these 2 plus uBlock make me stand out badly? So, you know, when we talk about, you know, having as few extensions as possible, sticking to only uBlock, typically that's in a very isolated, privacy-only environment. So if you're using Mullvad browser or Tor browser, Tor sadly still doesn't come with uBlock Origin out of the box, but the point is you shouldn't be installing extensions in Tor browser. And in Mullvad, it's just those two that come out of the box with it. But if you have a different browser, if you have a main browser which maybe doesn't have as good a fingerprint resistance in the first place, and you need access to a couple more extensions, the advice isn't to not use them. The advice is to just recognize that that's a limitation and try to keep that in the context of those browsers. So that's fine. It's fine if you have a couple extra extensions. It's not going to ruin your privacy. It's not going to make uBlock useless. You're still going to have really solid privacy and security. Just make sure you're keeping those extensions away from your really sensitive browsers that are fully designed for this kind of thing. I hope that explains that. Good to see Linux market share growing. Yeah, especially in Finland, apparently. Consentomatic auto sets cookie prompts for you. Yeah, uBlock Origin has a setting for that, which takes care of cookies. So that might deal with that extension for you. Yeah. Yeah, this is what Scriddle says as well. You're the GOAT, the best of the best. Thanks, Rigo. That's really nice. Really nice. I have my browser set to new cookie site data. Okay. Yeah, all right. Let's finish out these last couple wins here. We don't have too much more. It was a smaller week. So yeah, just 2 more here. Nakuzo! Here's a rundown of everything I've been working on since the latest post. NotesNook. Since my previous update, I've started using it more and more, mainly for sensitive work-related notes. I like the simplicity of it and will probably get a subscription to support the team, even though the free version covers 85% of my needs, and that's a general good thing to do. Remember that all of these privacy-first services that I recommend, that other people recommend, they're competing against the most profitable, richest companies in history, not just right now. So a few bucks their way really does help because they have to pay people, they have to pay infrastructure. So if you have the means, that little bit extra really helps, especially when it's a totally free service to start with and it's open source. Task managers. I've been experimenting with Joplin, Lunatask, and a simple note editor like Notesnook for all the life work-related task management. I recently made a post about this and promised to follow up rundown of the pros and cons of each service, which will take longer than initially anticipated since I want to fully see what each service offers. I'm excited to see this because I really like Lunatask, and I also sometimes want something simpler. And so using like a simple note editor for all of your life, I want to see what it's like to see your take on this, because that's something I've been thinking about as well. I don't think I'm going to make the switch, but I've been thinking about it. Lumo AI. Someone found a fantastic use case for it to aid me in their language learning. They tried with ChatGPT and others in the past, but Lumo handles the task a whole lot better than those services. So yeah, I guess if you guys are trying to learn a language, that's a good use case for Lumo. Finances canceled unused debit cards. And in the office, they switched from Microsoft to LibreOffice in their personal computer, not possible for work due to Microsoft 365. And then they deleted more unused accounts and apps on the phone. And they've currently settled for Notesnook as their task manager of choice. You can read more about my thoughts in the community post. And it looks like they have a whole thing. So yeah, there you go. If you guys want to learn more and like discuss that with them, that's what the forum's for. So join the forum. It's free to join. And it's supposed to be a resource for you guys, so definitely check it out. Whiskey Highball. Henry's video and the browser-only VPN workflow opened my eyes to how I could split tunnel on the Molvad Android app. I always kind of knew split tunneling was a possibility, but never considered using it practically until now. Kind of embarrassing, but also that's been my experience as well, which is a big reason why I made the video, because it's such an obvious thing but no one talks about it, right? Like, it seems like VPNs are only ever discussed in two contexts. You either use a VPN or you don't. And no one really seems to just mention the obvious of like, well, you know, because you hear people say, oh, I love using my VPN, but my banking apps don't work on Android with my VPN, so I have to always turn it off. And it's like, well, there's literally built-in split tunneling for that. So, and I'm being like obnoxious about this right now because this was also me, so I'm beating myself up over it. And then trying to emulate that cleanly on desktop really was just leaning into the extensions. So I agree. I also overlooked it. I think a lot of people overlook it, even though it's literally a feature that's like thrown in front of your face. When YouTube would get fussy since I'm using a VPN, I used to just disable it entirely, then go do something else, and I forgot I left my VPN off. Now I just split tunnel configured so GrayJ and my messaging apps don't go through the VPN. I get smooth YouTube watching and video calling without needing to toggle the VPN on and off. Cheers for that one. Of course, I know it's obvious. I know we all missed it, but that's why sometimes I make videos that have very simple purposes, and I think that that purpose was done. Before I get back to all of you in the live chat, please, if you're in the live chat, leave any wins, leave any questions, let me know how you're doing, let me know how your day's going, just, yeah, engage. But we have a few people on XMR chat. Let me get you a big screen here. Oh, it's still a little cut off. Let me see if I can fix that. Can I fix it? It doesn't look like I can fix it. Okay. There we go. The crop thing finally came up in my... Boom. You guys are like, this guy is ridiculous. And you were right. But I got it. So, for those who don't know, xmrchat.com, here, I'll show you guys. It's a way to tip people with Monero, including us. So if you want to ask any questions, eventually someday I'd like to actually make this part of the live chat experience so you guys can leave live chats. But you essentially just include some Monero and you put an amount and then you just send a question and it's fully anonymous. I don't know who these people are. Would love to hear you discuss, I think I might have covered this last time, but I'll cover it again anyway, just in case I missed it. So a viewer asks, would love to hear you discuss what you would want the privacy and security community to do if encryption platforms and tools were to become backdoored or made illegal in most major countries. Things do seem to be heading that way. So, my response to that, a few things to say to this. One, we aren't as close to it as you might be saying. Now, I'm not saying this to make everyone optimistic and not make people still aware. It's just that it's going to take a lot more push for this to be a global thing where encryption just isn't around anymore. That's step one. So I wouldn't be this stressed about it. I'm not making videos on how to bypass encryption laws yet. I'm nowhere near doing that, and I hopefully will never have to. And I don't think I'll have to. Second, this is one of those things that falls into the camp of something I cannot control for. So there are, let's say, 100 different things at any given time that you can do for your privacy and security journey. And 100 is an arbitrary number. It could be 89, it could be 6,000. My point is, there is always something you can do to improve your privacy and security right now. It could be moving over to a different browser, it could be installing a different extension, it could be changing a setting, it could be getting a new device, it could be removing a device, it could be a million things. It depends on who you are. You are much better focusing in on the things that matter in this massive group of stuff. And right now, just using encrypted tools in the first place is the thing that matters most. Focus on that. It's what you have control over. You can't control, a situation where all the countries decide to come together and ban encryption. Yes, once that starts becoming a discussion, please, let's get involved. Let's talk about what to do. But even then, it's more about advocating and trying to stop the law from being passed than it is from building a technological solution from day zero, if that makes sense. Especially if you don't have the tech savviness to build something yourself. So I'm not saying to be a doormat. I'm not saying to not think about this stuff and not try to be prepared as much as possible. I'm just saying that there are so many things that are valid to be worried about right now, independent of what might not even happen in the future. And I think it's much better to focus our time and energy on the things you can control that you can make an immediate difference with right now. And many of those things happen to also put you on the better side of history if things do go sour. If you're already using all of these best case scenario tools, those are already going to be best case protections if any of this stuff passes. So that's what I'd recommend to you. Now, Anon has a question. Let me show you. Anon, regarding XMR hash rate drama, GUPAX, simple GUI for efficient XMR P2Pool mining. So, okay. I have not kept up a huge amount with this. To my knowledge, some company claimed a 51% attack Monero, meaning they pretty much dominated the hash rate pool. I'm not an expert on this. If I say anything stupid right now, that's fine. Pretty much what this person is trying to do is advocating for more of you to contribute to the hash rate on your devices. So if you're able to mine some Monero and contribute to the hash rate, that is a tool that apparently can be used to do that. I don't know anything about this tool. I don't know if it's good or not. That's just what Anon is saying. So thank you, Anon, for that tip, and I hope that this is not a scam. So, because I don't know much about the service. Anomalia Systematica. Anomalia Systematica. Got it on the first try. I've learned a lot with you guys. I'm planning on launching a YouTube channel and blog for Hispanic people. My first language is Spanish, and privacy is not something that gets talked about among my Hispanic community, but we are too being surveilled. Yes, please do. We need more and more people talking about this, especially in different languages. Many of you might not know this. English isn't my first language. I know, it's wild. I am shocked by it too. And someday, a really cool long-term goal for Techlore would be to once again make Techlore content for 2 different languages. And I'm not going to say what language it is, and I'm not going to announce anything about it because I don't want you guys to think that's actually going to happen anytime. It's just kind of a far out dream of mine to be able to do that. And no, I don't speak the language anymore. I learned English when I was very young, and it became my primary language, and I lost pretty much all of my original language. So there's my life That's a personal detail that I don't think many of you, if any of you, know. But that's all XMR chat. If any of you want to ask something there, you can just tip some Monero, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Make sure there's nothing else here. Nope. All right. Now it's just a live chat. It's just you guys and me. Let's see. Okay, let's take a water break, everybody. The water breaks are mostly for me, but you guys should also take advantage of them. I'm gonna move my windows out here, clean things up a bit, so I can kind of just relax a little bit, finally, and no more screens having to go back and forth. An encrypted first language, eh? Yes, exactly. And then here we go, use signal peeps. We're gonna go over on this side of the screen so that you guys are also more visible. If you're in the signal group, say hi. Let's see. Kenny M in the signal group says, Proton VPN giving me lots of mysterious issues lately on Mac OS. Very laggy, especially after I switch servers. I don't have any connection for like 30 to 60 seconds. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, that's just overall been my experience with VPNs on Mac OS, with the exception of maybe Tailscale. Yeah, VPN, system-wide VPNs in general, and I don't know if this is just me, you guys let me know too. I feel like system-wide VPN, just it always works the moment I install it, things connect, everything's amazing, and then I use it for a month, then 2 months, then 3 months, and then it slowly just gets more and more inconvenient. More programs start to block my VPN. It's like the disconnect, reconnect thing just starts getting worse and worse. It stops working on certain networks. And I don't know how much of this is just me being delusional, because it doesn't make sense for it to work super well on day one and just slowly degrade over time. And I don't think it's any issue with the VPN companies. I feel like it's maybe an unfortunate coincidence that I've had to experience over and over. So I'd love to hear what you guys have experienced there. Garujo said Lumo does kind of choose open source models randomly. I think it might have been lucky for him, but I digress. I wanted to try learning Japanese through AI, so might give it a try at some point. Yeah. Those of you learning languages with AI, how do you do it? Like, do you just talk to it? Is it your advisor, so like it helps you choose what to do, or do you actually talk with it and learn the language with it? I haven't really heard much of this. And then let's see what I missed here. What is your view on BSD-based distros? Honestly, I'm not familiar enough with like the nitty-gritty differences between BSD and Linux to comment on like who the best person is for it. Based on what I've seen, there isn't a huge difference between the two, and most of the the reason why I'm always going to pick Linux for a majority of people is that there's just so much more community around it, and that really does make Linux powerful, right? Because right now, if someone I know and they're like, hey, I hate Windows, what do I migrate to? I don't want a Mac. I go, well, have you tried Linux? And they go, no, but that sounds like a lot. But if they actually try installing Linux, if they have an issue, if they get an error code, if they type that error code into their search engine and they get, 100 people who had the same problem and there's 5 different documented solutions, it's very different than something that might be BSD based, which is going to have a lot less of a community that A, already has resources for them, but B, is going to help them in the event that something goes wrong. So just from that perspective alone, I almost always push people towards Linux. I just think it's a bit more accessible for people. But I'm also not fully versed in the BSD side of things to maybe even be able to tell you like why someone should use BSD. Oh, Gas Key just said the ecosystem isn't there. It's everything I just said in like 4 words, so there you go. Linux, is it good for office work? Because Windows has Excel, PowerPoint, Word. So yes and no. If you literally just need to edit basic documents, a lot of things, even if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, Microsoft Office has a web version. So I don't know how intense you are using this Office suite, but if you're just doing basic stuff, you can even do this all on the web nowadays, which means that this is not at all tied to your operating system. Now, if you need something local, LibreOffice exists, OnlyOffice exists on Linux as well, and you should try those out. They should be cross-compatible with Microsoft Office. As for whether or not they're good enough for you and your needs, I can't answer that. But both of those are available on Windows. So you can already right now install LibreOffice and OnlyOffice on Windows, see if it works for you, and see if it matches everything you need it to do. And they will work exactly the same on Linux. So that's how I would test that out for yourself to see if it works. But yes, those tools do exist on Linux. I can't help you here, Mr. Wright, but I hope someone knows. Any good apps for tracking walking you would recommend? I don't know of apps off the top of my head, but it's in the research phase. I am doing an update to my fitness tracking video that I did years ago. And it's in the research phase, meaning I'm testing solutions right now and actually using them and like doing runs with them. So I might have a better answer once that video is done. Will you ever do a review of NIM VPN? It's unlikely. You know, we stopped doing VPN reviews because, well, for a few reasons. One, it's impossible to review every VPN because there's literally like Pineapple VPN and Apple VPN and Jar VPN and, you know, Poop VPN. Like, there's every freaking VPN out there, and every time I did a VPN review, people are like, well, why did you review this one and not, you know, Shoe VPN? Oh, sorry, I just wanted to prioritize Shirt VPN, but now it's Shoe VPN I should have done. So it's impossible to do all the VPNs. They also are updated all the time. Like, I would make a review, and then a month later, they release a feature that totally changes my review. So that was another problem. It's already infinite, and then it's more infinite on updates. And 3, I just don't think they're that useful. Nowadays, most VPNs offer very similar functions, and the only core difference is like the target demographic and the people that you're chasing. And I think our VPN chart sums up everything you need to know about a VPN company that is easily updated and doesn't require all of the overhead. So that's why I opted for just a VPN chart. And also that's community driven, right? Like someone left a comment on the newest video saying, hey, ExpressVPN is out of date. And I left a comment saying, well, the community, you caught this, like please open a GitHub issue. I opened a GitHub issue for them and I put the changes they wanted and I linked it in the comment. But guys, that is a community project. So I can't keep up. I'm not checking every day, like every update for the 30, 40 VPN companies on there. So if you guys are familiar with a VPN company and catch a mistake, please, please, please contribute on GitHub. That really does make it better for everybody. So those are all the following reasons why. Like, and if I can't keep up with a VPN chart to be accurate by myself as one person, there is no way I can make dedicated VPN reviews for each thing. Especially when reviews take like a week to do because you actually have to use the service and give your thoughts. So I hope that answers your question. So I'm not going to say no because NIM is a bit unique and maybe something like that would deserve its own review, but it's unlikely, I think. Let's see, what are you streaming with? Mac? What background blur? Yeah, so pretty much the entire production workflow for Techlore takes place on Mac OS. I hope that nowadays I don't have to explain why, which is I have access to much better professional tools that make my job literally 10 times easier. I've gone through the whole trying to run Techlore off of Linux for production, and it's just not that good. DaVinci Resolve isn't as good as on Linux. There is no good Photoshop, and design is actually not bad on Linux, but I don't consider GIMP a great alternative to Photoshop, and I think the Affinity suite is amazing, but sadly Affinity is not on Linux. So all my production tools for Techlore that make this awesome content are available on Mac OS. So I think it's a great platform for video. And of course, it's for work. So yeah. Let's see. I really like Linux, but dependencies, software binary issues, and offline make it very difficult. Still keep trying though, you know, like it depends. You know, if you, like I just said, this is coming from someone who just talked about how Mac is really good for production, and I had a lot of issues with Linux for production. That's okay. You can have multiple machines for something, right? Like this is why, like Nate for the new oil, like he loves using Windows for gaming. A lot of you here who use Linux might still use Windows for gaming. You might have a dedicated desktop for gaming. You might dual boot. That's okay. That's literally part of it. If all of your most sensitive data that you care the most about is on an operating system that you love and trust, then you've pretty much done most of the winning. If you're running Steam on an operating system that doesn't give a crap about you, then that's fine. So yeah, that's really how I'd look at it, is see what those dependencies are and see if there's still an area for Linux in your life. Soon I'll replace my Alexa with Home Assistant and replace the smart devices I already have with EV Home. I don't know about this, so yeah, is that supposed to be a privacy respecting service? I'm not familiar with EV. Mac is great for video. Yeah, I agree. It is so absurd that just 20 years ago, Windows XP has stored all software and games in DVD and fully used offline. Nowadays, finding offline is a treasure hunt. Yeah, it is pretty wild, just how much things have shifted in overall short amount of time, historically speaking. Are you planning to make more videos about self-hosted privacy services or ways to self-host stuff for your privacy in general? I'm sure it'll happen. It's really tough. I have so many things I want to do on the channel, and it's hard to prioritize. Ultimately, what is the most impactful thing I can do, I think, in my position, is getting people who are using Google off of Google, using people who are using Windows off of Windows, like meeting the majority of people where they're at and giving them realistic alternatives that won't ruin their life and ideally help their life. That's where I want to make the biggest difference. I don't actually think self-hosting is that solution for most people. I don't think the solution to Windows, to not using a password manager, is a self-hosted alternative. I think that it's Bitwarden. I think it's Proton Pass. I think that not self-hosting your own photo library, I think it's using Entei. I think like services are what people like, and that's what they want to use, and a lot of these services do that. So my point is, that is very important to me. With that said, I also love the concept of self-hosting, and I know a lot of you want to get into the self-hosting world, and now, there has to be some path that's lined up for you guys, because a lot of people, maybe we get them off of Google Photos and onto a private photo service, but then what if they want to run their own photo service and they're kind of stuck with just a service? So I do want to continue building the ramps, if that makes sense. It's just hard to prioritize right now with so many different projects going on all the time. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I hope it explains that. So the answer is yes and no. I would like to make more self-hosting content. I just don't know if I want to make that, if it's sacrificing the content that is reaching more people and making a larger impact on those people and getting them off of those worst case scenario services. So yeah, that's my answer. Does this community, including Techlore, recommend pfSense or OPNsense hardware solutions? There's no reason I or most people in our community don't recommend it. We're pretty pragmatic, so if you give yourself a good reason why this fits into your workflow, I don't see why myself or anyone else here would say no to you. So, Eve Home are smart devices that run on device, no cloud. Let me check it out. So this person is talking about this, and they're saying that it's on device. Ooh, smart blinds. Yeah, no cloud, no registration, and no tracking. Local intelligence. So as a wireless motion sensor, door and window, flare, whoa, energy, switch your devices on and off. This actually looks pretty cool, dude. Yeah, I'll check this out. Products, smart water control, they have everything. So, okay, since you're using this, I know that there's no cloud, but how do you manage it all? So what is the connection point? Is it like only on network? Is it self-hosted? If you can give me a TLDR and a live stream, that would be ideal. I know I'm asking you it's a big ask. It's to somehow summarize that whole thing in a live chat. But to be honest, moving to Linux, it does everything I want of an OS. It's just more pleasant to use than Windows. It's not even just a privacy thing. Yeah, I think it's getting there. I think Linux is getting to the point where now, I will, my personal opinion is perhaps Linux in the last 5 years has gotten 10% better, but I would argue what's actually the more impactful reason people are moving to Linux is that Windows has gotten 50% worse. That's what I think is really happening. Like, I don't want to take away from the cool stuff Linux has done, but I really think that Windows is just worse, which is making Linux an easier sell for us. But there's still a lot of things missing from Linux that prevent me from using it for everything in my life. And a big one of those is also ARM. I would love to see Linux ARM and have the same kind of efficiency that you can see right now in the Apple side of things, but on the Linux side of things. I know there's Linux ARM. I know I'm going to get all the comments about it, but it is just nowhere near where Apple currently has their ARM situation in terms of performance, in terms of software compatibility, in terms of accessibility. Every time I try Linux on ARM, it's just a nightmare. So that's something I'd love to see get better on the Linux world. I don't really plan to self-host. Proton is good enough for me. Yeah, I think that's probably where a lot of people land, to be honest, is that services are good enough for their needs. What are your thoughts on the Mullvad browser versus LibreWolf browser's fingerprint protection? Wouldn't Mullvad be more logical to choose if they teamed up with the Tor project themselves? So I guess, I don't know if you're referring to a specific feature, but Mullvad is trying to anonymize all their users to look the same, using pretty much the same philosophy as the Tor browser, and yes, they are formally partnered with the Tor project with the Mullvad browser. Excluding the Tor browser, I don't think there's any other browser that can even claim to be better at fingerprint resistance than the Mullvad browser. With that said, LibreWolf does have some fingerprint protection. They do enable a lot of the stuff, as well as more than the regular Firefox installations. And so LibreWolf still has strong fingerprint resistance as far as I can tell. I don't think it's going to be better than Mullvad, but I still think it's strong. So you're asking if it's more logical to choose. I think that there are different use cases, perhaps, and you can even use LibreWolf as a browser that saves your history and is something that you can log into your accounts with, which isn't really what Mullvad's designed for. So you can actually use both browsers in your workflow, potentially. Did I hear a response back from DeleteMe? I believe DeleteMe published a blog article. I don't remember if they responded to me specifically. It's been so long now. It's been over a year, I think, since that happened. But I think they did make a public blog article. And I don't remember their reasons being fully convincing. Honestly, the thing that made me the most upset about the DeleteMe situation, for those who don't know, DeleteMe is a data removal service. There was Consumer Reports research done that pretty much showed they weren't very effective. And the main thing I was upset about, which is still an issue to this day, is the way they advertise their tiers. I didn't realize the whole time I was using DeleteMe, I had some like entry-level, version of their plans, and I had to like upgrade to this insanely overpriced plan in order to actually get what they promise in their marketing. So I found that to be really kind of scummy. Now, I guess now that we know this, it's easier to avoid that problem, but I still think, it's much more transparent what Easy Opt-outs is doing right now. Easy Opt-outs, I believe it's $20 or $25 a month, or a year, not a month. And that's it. That's their plan. I think they have business plans as well, but for an individual, that's their plan. They tell you exactly what they get rid of and what they don't, and that's all you do. Things I'm looking for in the future is Redact.dev did mention, their CEO did mention in the interview I did with them that they're looking at doing a local data removal service where it does all the opt-outs locally on your computer as if you're doing them yourself. It just automates the process. That is the next level that I'd love to see happen, because it means then you don't even have to trust any provider with your data. So that's kind of where the space is currently at the moment. The one thing I will say is you run even local-only smart devices, make sure your router's firmware is kept up to date. Yes, yes, yes. Always do that. It's overlooked. The cameras only work on Apple Home. Wow, interesting. Yeah, I'm going to look into this Eve Home stuff. It actually looks pretty cool. Do you think that a GNOME network in a spoof MAC address and selecting random with a VPN can be private? I don't know why it wouldn't be, right? Like you're spoofing your MAC address and then spoofing your IP address with a VPN. What would be the issue with that workflow? Yeah, I like Fedora. Fedora is my favorite, so. I moved to MacBook Air for my laptop needs. Couple days battery life, fanless, cool. Yeah, dude, I would kill to see like what Apple has done with their hardware, with their M chips, but with like properly running Linux. I know the closest we have is Asahi Linux right now, but yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. I will think about getting a MacBook when my laptop is finally ready to die, but I'm leaning more towards if I can get a Linux laptop. Yeah, I'd say, you know, if you need Mac OS, then of course a MacBook, but if you can get a Linux laptop, there's a ton of perks there, especially in this video titled over, you know, moving to Linux. I've already done, I think, a lot of the sells for Linux throughout this video. If I was getting a Linux laptop right now, it would definitely be Framework, without a doubt. I think Framework is doing some cool stuff. They're continuing to iterate, and I think they're going to keep going places, I think. Yeah, let's make this a 5-minute warning, right? 4-minute warning now. That gives us until the half hour. So leave your last comments here. Leave your last questions. There's still, if you're still on and you haven't left a like yet, please leave a like. I'd love to see you guys support when you can. And then before I answer the last few questions, just a reminder, if you like what we're doing here at Techlore, we really couldn't do it without all of you guys. We're very picky with our sponsors, and we only pick people that like we think is a really good overlap for you. So besides that, we get some money from affiliate revenue. We get some money from YouTube ads, but still pretty much the major way we get our income is from all of you guys. So you can support on Patreon. You can support on XMR chat via Monero. We have an XMR link just in our website. Here, let me pull it up. I can show it to you guys. There's a ton of ways. And, you know, if all of you just send $1, like that really does help a lot, and it really helps take us further. There's also free ways to support us. You can contribute to our projects. But again, like I said, you can become a Techlorian on our forum. You can do that on Patreon. Go Incognito is the course. And then, of course, we have PayPal, YouTube, and GitHub. So you can do it natively on YouTube right now. And yeah, XMR chat. So don't forget to support Techlore if you like what we do here. If you like what we're doing but you can't support, again, there's free ways. And otherwise, just being here and being active is amazing, and I'm really happy that you're all here because the emotional support is also huge. So thank you all for just being active. Let's see. Any recommendations of new routers for 2025? Old Asus is kind of dying and not getting any updates. Ubiquiti or Unify? I've heard good things about Ubiquiti. But right now, so I've had the same router for a long time and I haven't done updated research. I've gotten this question now twice in the last week. So it's the kind of thing, and I haven't had an answer either time, so I should really look into this myself because my information is very outdated and all the routers I'd mentioned are from like 5 years ago now. So yeah, I hope if anyone else has a recommendation for Swisskill, please let them know. Will you make a video on phone and laptop data backups, as recently my phone was damaged and my life became so hard? I'll add it to the video list of ideas. We have a lot of things, so I'm not going to make any promises, but I am going to add that to the video list. Let's see. Okay, I added it to the list. That doesn't mean it's happening next week. Doesn't mean it's happening next month. It just means it's on the list, but it is a really important video topic. Yeah, there shouldn't be any issue with this workflow. As long as you're okay with your MAC address being spoofed. I don't know if it spoofs it per network or every time you connect. If it's every time you connect, With like public Wi-Fi networks, you might have to re-authenticate each time, so that's something to consider. It's still possible to perform man-in-the-middle on decentralized VPNs running a node. Is that the only downside of using a DVPN? Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I'm not that familiar with decentralized VPNs. I did an interview with the Safing guys. They talked a lot more about the pros and cons of decentralized VPNs, so I think they're much better experts. And I know they have their own decentralized VPN, essentially, but they're very pragmatic, and they're like, here's where we're not as good, here's where regular VPN is better, here's where Tor is better. So I'd recommend that interview because they do a good job breaking it down. Any plans to make more de-Googling videos kind of similar to how PewDiePie did? Honestly, I can. I don't mean to brag, but if you look up Techlore de-Googling, I made probably one of the first major de-Googling guides on YouTube that got a lot of traction. That was very novel, I guess, at the time. And so I don't know, I had my chance, and now these much bigger, more popular, more impactful people are doing it. So yeah, I think the job's done. I think people have a ton of resources now on de-Googling, and there's communities around it nowadays. So yeah, there's other things that I'd like to make that I think are actually more impactful than that now, because there's so many good resources for de-Googling now. So yeah, it's pretty cool these guys covered it, because now it's such an accessible thing. Let's see. I use Proton's hide my aliases, but I'm a bit worried that they one day disappear and I have to change the email of hundreds of accounts. Yeah, if you're really concerned about this, try to use a custom domain. You can use these services with a custom domain, so that worst case, let's say Proton shuts down, they say screw you, whatever. You just set up a catch-all domain and you'll still get all of your emails through your custom domain on whatever new email provider you choose. So if you're really concerned about that, there is somewhat of a solution for you there. Yeah. I'm glad you thought it was well presented. Yeah, that was a long time ago, so. A YouTube creator, Shane Watley, talks about a lot about Eve in his smart home videos. Worth checking out to see Eve products in action. Okay, cool, thank you. It seems like a great ecosystem, so and there's not enough talk about that. Maybe it's something I should do more content on, because that is something I don't see enough coverage of. Honestly surprised you haven't gone harder on DeleteMe. I've noticed how they switched to sponsoring to non-privacy creators and audiences since that study real quick. Speaks volumes. Yeah, I mean, we went pretty hard on them. Like, we did entire live streams dedicated to like talking about the situation, but there's no need to go overly hard on a service. You know, like, we went hard on them. We told you guys exactly what they did. We told you guys what they did wrong. And we said, here's what we recommend instead. And you know what? We picked those services now. So yeah, I mean, earlier in the Techlore days, I would have maybe gone harder at people. But nowadays it's like, hey, we have this new information now. Here's what we know now. And let's just pivot. You know, the more that we are like still stuck on that, the more of a thing that it becomes, and it just doesn't need to be. It's like, hey, yeah, DeleteMe did this crappy thing. We don't really trust them anymore. Here's two better alternatives. I'm migrating to this. You guys should probably migrate too. If you're still on DeleteMe, it's not doing you harm, but you should probably move over when your subscription ends, type of thing. And that, I think, is a much more just like, all right, let's just be level-headed about it all, you know, kind of dealio. But I think that they should definitely be like, a lot of these people that maybe are still sponsored by them and still are talking about them positively, I think that is very different, and they need to be harder about it. But you know, you can make a whole video that's literally entire purpose is just to crap on it. I don't think it's gonna really change anything. I think the best thing they can do is just educate people and be like, hey, here's what they did, and not make it seem like it's a personal thing, because it's really not personal. If DeleteMe tomorrow changes things, I'm gonna recommend them again, right? It doesn't, with the asterisk of their history maybe holding me off for a while. But you guys know what I'm saying, right? Like, companies can change, they can go worse, they can get better, so it's important for us to, I think, allow them to do that, is what I'm trying to say. It's something that, as I've met more and more people behind these projects, I think is a really important thing to do, because when a lot of these projects make mistakes, it's genuinely a lot of just humans behind a keyboard who made honest mistakes. They weren't really trying to do anything. I think DeleteMe pushes that a bit far. So I'm not saying that's necessarily DeleteMe, but it's something I've learned, and I've learned to just better understand kind of like what's going on behind their minds. And a lot of times when the community gets mad at them, they're like, oh shit, we didn't know. We hear you guys, let's fix this ASAP because we didn't realize this would have this kind of impact. So that's my long way of saying I agree, but also not fully, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like it just requires an appropriate response. Yeah. It was, what they did was bad. And then once and I already explained what happened with DeleteMe, so you guys can back up. Maybe it was like 20, 30 minutes ago. I'll have timestamps, and maybe the timestamps will cover that. Is there any way to specifically protect elderly users when using iPhone and iPad? Well, yeah, I mean, make sure they have a password to get in. I definitely would recommend biometrics for people like this, especially if it means that they'll have more locks on some of their apps. If it means their banking app is protected because they use biometrics instead of a password, I actually think that's a win. I'd say make sure they have a stronger, more than 4 to 6 digit password on their device, especially if they do that. Check in on their apps, make sure they delete things that aren't good and are doing them more harm than good. Make sure they have 2FA whenever possible, but make things as easy as possible for them. You need to meet people where they're at with this, especially when you're dealing with people who aren't tech savvy. So maybe don't install a VPN for them, because maybe it'll stop working and they don't know what to do. For someone like this, private relay. Just say private relay, call it a day, and hey, if things start going well and all the small adjustments you make are like well received, then you can still evolve beyond that. So maybe get uBlock Origin Lite in their browser, get private relay, check on their apps, make sure that their passcodes and everything are strong, and that's a good starting point for them. And then keep on moving from there. Maybe eventually even get to the point of enabling advanced data protection for their iCloud account. That's something they probably would never notice is enabled, and it just requires saving that recovery key in a safe place, and that's pretty much it. So that's kind of how I would look at it if I was in your shoes. Well done, thank you. Fedora is convenient. I frequently switch. Setting up secure boot with an NVIDIA driver is too easy. Don't say that. It's easy enough. It's no such thing as too easy. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm 7 minutes over my time that I gave you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping things up. Again, if you guys like what's happening here at Techlore, tons of ways to support. You can find those all down in the description. But I especially want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you, everybody, for asking questions. You can join next week's Q&A on our forum. It's totally free to join. And it's meant to be a resource for all of you, for you guys to share how your journeys are going, for you to be able to ask questions, and please maximize its use and use it to help you on your journey, and help others as well. If you're somebody who doesn't need a community, but you feel like you can positively contribute to a community, please join. There's so many people who are looking for help, and you can really help them out. So yeah, that's all I have to share with you all. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you hopefully next week.